Listen, I have to echo Commissioner David Stern for a moment just to say I am so very, very, very honored to have a role on this stage tonight with Jason Collins and the amazing and Matt Beck and the incredible honorees tonight. You know, two times every single year, I have the privilege of sharing the stage with incredible honorees and student leaders like Lone and Eli and Emmet and Leo, and introducing them to all of you, the people who make GLSEN's work possible. They honor our heroes and allies by presenting awards and hosting the event, but they are always the stars of the show. In 2005, at the Respect Awards in Los Angeles, GLSEN honored Frankie Martinez as our Student Advocate of the Year. In 5th grade, Frankie spent most of the year trying to stay out of the line of fire, avoiding hallways and the schoolyard, so he wouldn't have to hear those taunts of faggot that were thrown at him every day. In high school, Frankie joined a GLSEN student leadership program and began fighting to transform his school. And by his senior year, when he stood on that stage, he had been elected student body president. Yeah, the crowd, it was an amazing moment. The crowd in LA, just like tonight, the crowd in LA stood to applaud Frankie's bravery and his accomplishments, but then Frankie's father stepped forward to say how proud he was of his gay son for surviving and rising above. There was not a dry eye in the house. At the end of the night, I stood with Frankie and his family at the back of the room as the guests were all filing out, and I saw dozens and dozens of those guests come up to Frankie's father to shake his hand, to give him a hug, and to thank him for standing by his son. And in that crush, Frankie's mother pulled me aside. Looking at me in the eye, she said, "I need you to know I used to worry about whether Frankie would make it out of high school alive. I am so grateful that he found GLSEN, and that is when I lost it." I had just become a parent myself that year, and I heard in her words every parent's hope. We want nothing more than for our children to be healthy, safe, and happy, and to find a community that loves and supports them. And in that moment, it hit me that it is GLSEN's job to make that hope a reality. We have come so far since 2005, but recent horrifying events, a murder right here in New York City in Greenwich Village, the birthplace of so much of our movement, reminds us that we still have so much left to do. Every day, GLSEN is at work across the country to make sure that every student can find community and safety and a real opportunity to learn, to lead, and to be themselves. So how do we do this? First, with resources like GLSEN Safe Space Kit that Kira and Kevin were telling you about earlier tonight. Research shows that a supportive educator is one of the single most important factors in a student's success at school. As we say often, one visible source of support can save a student's life, with that sticker up on the door to identify themselves to all the students in a school. But with the guide that's also in the kit, that individual can reach out to their colleagues to start to build the community of support that truly transforms a school. I am so proud to tell you that when Leo Washington left Georgia to find a safe school in Florida, he landed at a school where Deb Baker and her colleagues, the founding members of GLSEN Fort Lauderdale, had done that work and transformed that school. We're also getting this work done by partnering with school districts from across the country. GLSEN's Safe Space Initiative, the prompter has lost me because I went off script. I was just so proud after Leo's presentation. I had to let you know that about how we came to meet him. We're also doing this through partnerships with school districts. We're building teams in low-income districts across the country to make life better for LGBT students in our public schools. By the end of next year, GLSEN Safe Schools Initiative, a partnership with the US government, will reach at least 82,000 students in the struggling schools of Baltimore, DC, and Los Angeles. Finally, we always have to remain ready to respond to continuing bias and violence in our schools, even as we're running all of our programs to ensure proactively that students do right by every student. We still need to be able to rally when schools and school boards and closed-minded parents stand between students and the school experience that they deserve. Just 2 months ago, this happens in ways both big and small, matters of life and death, and matters of exclusion that send a deadening message to young people everywhere. Just 2 months ago, tens of thousands of GLSEN supporters rallied around a high school principal in Sullivan, Indiana. Some parents there had decided to organize an alternative prom at which no LGBT students would be allowed. In the face of community upheaval and with support from folks around the country, that principal stood firm for the principle that prom is truly for everyone. And just a couple of weeks ago, every student in the school was welcome at one of the biggest events of any student's senior year. When you think about, yes, sir. When you stop and think about what students have to face every day at school, it makes students like Lone and Eli and Emmett and Leo and Frankie seem all the more remarkable. What is it that makes them able to do what they do in the face of the bias and violence and exclusion that they face every day? In my 12 years at GLSEN, I have seen so many students in our programs bounce back from adversity, moving from anger into action, determined to make things better for themselves and for others. This work we do is making a difference. I recently heard from Frankie Martinez, our 2005 Student Advocate of the Year. Frankie graduated from Brown University and is now the entertainment manager for San Diego Pride. He's kind of worried it's coming up very soon. And he wrote me at a time he was feeling particularly stressed with Pride, moments away. But he said, "What I took away from my time with GLSEN was much more than simply a set of skills. I gained a sense of community, a sense of purpose, and belief in myself. What more could we ask for?" Thank you all for making all of this work possible. Have a wonderful evening.